Hi, my name is Jason Holmes. I'm a Region Livestock Specialist with the LSU Ag Center. We're going to talk a little bit about flight zones, point of balance, some of the things that we can use whenever we're working cattle through pens, through races, and through chutes. Flight zone, contrary to popular belief, is not how far the cattle will run whenever we do put pressure on them. The flight zone is basically, if you think about a circle around the animal, the amount or how close we can get to that animal in terms of how much pressure we can put on that animal before we create movement. So on some animals, that bubble, that personal space, if you want to think of it that way, is going to be greater than on other animals. So whenever we get into smaller pen spaces, so whenever we bring cattle out of pasture, whenever we're moving those cattle from the pasture into a holding pen, that flight zone is going to be big. So that personal space of that bubble is going to be larger, and it's going to shrink down as we move them into smaller holding pens and then actually into the race. So just think about it in terms of that bubble or that circle around that animal in terms of how close we can get to them, in terms of the amount of pressure before we create movement is what we're talking about flight zone. All right, so one other term that we use in terms of working cattle is point of balance. So generally speaking, the point of balance is going to be somewhere around the withers or the point of the shoulder of the animal. And whenever we move forward or backwards of the point of balance, we should create movement going one way or another. So if I think about the point of balance being at the withers or the point of the shoulder, so if I move straight in towards that point of balance, I should create movement forwards or backwards. So if I move forward towards her head, I should create movement going the opposite direction. So if I move towards her, towards the rear of her point of balance, and I don't know if she's going to cooperate. Let me see if I can get her to stand still for a minute. So if I catch her eye, I get her to look at me, and I move directly in towards right behind the point of balance, I should create movement going the other way. So if I move towards her head, I get her to move back towards the camera. So if I move towards her head, get her to move the opposite direction. So that's what we're talking about, point of balance and getting her to move in the opposite direction. So if I want her to go forward towards the camera, I'm going to move behind that point of balance to get her to move off to my right. If I want her to move to my left, this direction, I'm going to get ahead of that point of balance more towards her head and create movement going the opposite direction or more towards my left. So we can use that point of balance to create movement in the direction that we want them to go. So point of balance being at the point of the shoulder, the withers of the animal. So if we want to create movement towards the back, we would move towards the rear of the animal. We would move towards the head of the animal to move them off that direction towards the back. So if we want to create movement going forward, we'll move towards the tail of the animal to create movement going forward. So sometimes we're all guilty about trying to move cattle from directly behind. And something that we have to remember is that if I get right behind that animal, she cannot see me. So if I want cattle to travel in a straight line, I'm going to have to move from side to side to try to create that straight movement. Because if I walk directly behind her, she cannot see me. They cannot see directly behind them. So if I'm going to create movement, I'm going to have to move in a half moon shape on each side of them to keep that movement going straight. So whenever we have cattle in the race, and we can demonstrate that later, just pushing them directly from behind is not a good idea. We've got to be able to catch their eye where they can see us, and they cannot see us from directly behind.